and welcome to Ignite 2022, an industry-focused professional panel series. My name is Katie Martucci. I use she, her pronouns. I'm Assistant Director for Career Education and the Center for Student Professional Development here at DelVal, and I will be your friendly Ignite facilitator. Today's panel features professionals from the behavioral health industry who work at our featured employer Access Services. As a reminder, if you enjoy today's conversation, you can email cspd@delval.edu to connect one-to-one with any of our panelists. You can also check out additional Ignite recordings on our SharePoint site, which will be linked in the video notes. So without further delay, let's dive in, and I'd love to ask our panelists to please introduce themselves. We can take the same order throughout the panel, so if we could go Terri, Moira, Mike, that'd be great. Thanks, everyone.
Well, my name is Terri Dewey. Hi to everyone out there. I am a person who grew up in New York State, and I've had a lot of different jobs over the years, but I'm currently in talent acquisition here at Access Services. So old school recruiter, modern industry standard name is talent acquisition. I recently relocated up to this area from Miami after being there for 6 years. And I have a little bit of a background in higher education after school systems, music, and crisis response, so a lot of different things. But basically, I love working with people, and I love helping people find and make connections to the things they're interested in doing.
Hi all, I am Moira. I'm the Associate Director with Montgomery County Mobile Crisis here at Access Services. I was born and raised in Montgomery County, and I had gone to the Scranton area for school and then did a year of volunteer work in Chicago. And I moved back here, and because I didn't go to school here, I had no idea where to even start to look for a job. I didn't have any connections, anything. And so I know how overwhelming that can be. This is a true story, how I found Access Services. I've been here for over 9 years now. I was looking up on Facebook people who I had class with who already graduated that I knew was from this area. One of those individuals worked at Access Services, which led me to their website, and the crisis worker position was open, and I fell in love and was here ever since. And I know we'll talk about this later, but if I thought I'd end up in a career in crisis when I went to counseling, yet alone in leadership, young 20-year-old Moira would have not believed that. So I'm excited for the opportunity to talk to you guys all about where life can take you unexpectedly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike McKenna. I'm the director of the TIP program at Access Services for Transition to Independence process. We are a specialized young adult mental health program. I have been in a variety of different spaces in behavioral health and mental health over the past 20 odd years. The last 12 of those with Access Services, and really had the privilege of being with the TIP program since its inception here at Access about 8 years ago. So it's been an interesting journey for me and very rewarding. So I'm happy to share with everybody today.
Well, thank you everyone for those introductions. And our first question is just to talk about how and when you learned about your current career choice or industry. Some of you kind of touched on this a little bit, but you can take that in whatever direction, how deep you want to go. So when and how did you learn about your current career choice and industry?
Well, I would say I think of my current career choice as two things in one, which is pretty great. Access Services is a nonprofit provider, and they focus in 3 different areas that I've been interested in. One is intellectual disabilities and autism. So we serve and provide a variety of services for families and individuals who have intellectual disabilities and autism. We also provide a wide variety of services for families and for children, because we believe that every family needs a village. So that's something I have a lot of experience in, is doing family services. And I learned about that when I was in after school coordination. I ended up partnering with a lot of parents because the children in my K through 12 program after school often would have IEP plans or specific behavioral needs or even health needs or education needs that just weren't being met. And parents would come to me and ask for support. So I was trained by the University of Miami in a family navigator pathway, which basically taught you every single service from the county to the city of Miami out to the state level for everybody from the age 0 to 26, every service you could ever be provided for. And the goal was that we would help navigate families through that. So in some ways, what I do now is helping families and people who are interested in those things find ways to serve others. The other area is behavioral health, which I've really been involved in behavioral health since about my graduation a long time ago from college. So I've done a lot of crisis response. I've been a resident director. I've been trained in walking with people through what it means to be fully healthy. And when there have been struggles with mental wellness or physical wellness, trying to connect them with all this, the different parts of that. So after school coordination and education, higher education, all the different levels of that, everybody needs good mental health, including me. And so I've been on my own journey to kind of remove some of the stigma from that. And I love that access services like Mike McKenna's program TIP. I love his program because they're really, mental health is health, right? For all of us. So this is something that matters to all of us. So I've been involved in what I do for a very long time because I've always needed mental health. And then for me, the recruitment talent acquisition part of it is more recent. I've been recruited through LinkedIn frequently over the years. And I always find it interesting, like, how did this person find me? Why are they reaching out? I was recruited for the position that I'm in. A friend reached out to me who works for Access Services because they knew I was in Miami looking to transition to be closer to family, and that this job provided a ton of flexibility. And for me, what I love about talent acquisition is it's a people job and it's a networking job where you get to go out and do a variety of different things externally, but it's also very much a helping job. Like, to me, if I do my job well, even if I meet someone and they're not interested in an open position we have at Access Services, I think it's also my responsibility to help them make the connection to other organizations or other groups or give them next steps. So much like when I was in higher education, I'd talk to students about what they were interested in their careers, next steps. It's really what I do in talent acquisition. I just try to help people find what is the next step. And if the next step for you is something with Access Services, great. I'm all about helping you get connected. So that's a little bit about my path.
The first time I can remember thinking about this industry or field when I was in high school, I remember saying I wanted to be a high school guidance counselor. I don't think I knew what that entailed. I don't think I knew what that meant. I don't know why I said that, but I did. So I was fortunate enough. I went in freshman year of college undecided. And what I really appreciated was the University of Scranton asked me, what are 3 things I'm interested in? And what are 3 things I'm not interested in? Whatsoever. So I've always kind of approached things of, this is what I know, what I don't want to do, what's left. So I was in an intro to sociology, an intro to counseling and human services, and an intro to psych. And I just connected most with the intro to counseling course. So I declared that as my major and went forward there. I actually went straight from undergrad to grad. I had an opportunity with a graduate assistantship. I couldn't turn it down. And I originally went in for my master's in rehabilitation counseling. And then it was the first time in my life I hated my counseling classes, and I was very confused because that's all I was taking. And I realized I just picked the wrong concentration in counseling. I didn't realize how vocation-based it was, and like assessments of capacity and ability. And so I was able to transition to community mental health counseling. And that felt so much better for me and was such a wide lens to give you flexibility to figure out what are you most passionate about. I always say too, I think a lot of those classes are geared towards outpatient therapy, and you don't realize what other job opportunities there are in the field of social work or counseling. So I didn't even know what was out there. I didn't even know how to start. So I think for me, one of the things I realized was what drew me to crisis specifically was I knew I didn't want to sit in a cubicle all day. I knew I didn't want to have a monotonous day, even in this field. And so there was something for me that also very much so aligned with what I value as a person. I remember when I came in for my first interview that it was really important for me to work somewhere that I felt was in alignment with my values, how they saw help, how they saw having a presence in the community. And I felt that since my first interview. And then I've continued to feel that way the entire time I was here. I know it is very unique for someone to start at this time and be at the same agency for 9 years when I started here as my first job. And so there has been times that I've also thought about, is this just because it's comfortable I'm staying here? Why do I choose to stay here every day? And to make sure it's clear that the choice I'm making over and over is because I want to be here. I'm still learning and growing. So, I think if you had asked me at different points, there was always something in the helping field. I think through internships and things like that, it helped me narrow down I didn't want to work with kids. Scratch the high school guidance counselor. Didn't know what I was thinking. And looking back now, it's really ironic. I had to take crisis classes and how much I enjoyed them and the professor. And I just didn't know that was possible as a job in this field. So yeah, that's how I ended up here. And I just really enjoy the creativity and the space that's also one of kind of some social justice and advocacy, because in crisis, we see all the spaces where things aren't working, and to be able to advocate for people and to support them in getting help that's actually helpful is another piece of it. So we wear a lot of hats in crisis, and I think I enjoy getting to be in different roles. And now too, being able to help develop and support other young professionals.
Yeah, I think I have a very similar story to Terri and Moira, and I think a lot of that, the theme is you just have a drive to help folks. You just, and I feel like that from a very early age for myself. I'm like, I'm not sure what this field has in store for me, but I kind of know what my strength is. I kind of know what's in my wheelhouse, and I feel like if I use that in spaces that can benefit other people in my community, that would be a fulfilling journey for me, no matter where I ended up. So a lot of my work initially out of school was in behavioral health, and I was fortunate enough to have some really good mentors early on that I kind of got the lay of the land from them and figured out kind of how to surround yourself with the right kind of people so that you could form a supportive team for people that needed your help. I remember I was at Access Services just working part-time when TIP became a program, and my supervisor at the time knew my strength was working with young adults and teens, and brought up the opportunity to me. I interviewed a bit late. I think they actually extended the interview process to get me in there, so I just barely made it in. And got the opportunity to take on some leadership roles here. And Access has provided me with the opportunity to be really creative. And I think this space with TIP particularly, we've really been able to meet that need, where we talk a lot about, specifically with our age group, which is 16 to 26-year-olds. And this question specifically, when they're like, I'm not quite sure what I want to do. I'm not quite sure what the future has in store for me in terms of a career path. I can relate. The TIP program was not in existence in this state when I graduated college, but I knew what my path was. And when the opportunity presented itself, I took advantage of that opportunity. So I think that's a powerful message to folks who may not know quite what they want to do, but know what they're good at, know what they get excited about, and know what gets them fired up. And if you want to be a part of something like this to be helpful in your community, it's exciting to find those opportunities. And I think they present themselves to people who are highly motivated to find that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you each taking us on a little journey into your background. I love how, I think at different points you each mentioned, considerations of what are your values, what are your interests, what are your abilities, what are your strengths, what's your personality, like what do you gravitate toward? And I think that those are things that we talk about with students on the regular, and I love that they're kind of like being driven home right now. So thanks. So on to our next question. Can you talk a little bit about how your career has differed or stayed the same from what you imagined it would be when you started? I think some of you got into this a little bit. But again, take it in whatever direction you'd like to. So it could be from when you first started at Access, or it could be all the way back to when you were a student in high school.
I just laugh when you say this, Katie, because I am not at all where I thought it would be. And it's okay. If anybody out there has changed majors, that was me. If anybody out there has changed locations, that was me. I thought I was going to be on Broadway. That was literally my dream. I love music. I love to sing and play the piano. I love to act. And that's all I wanted when I went to college, was to find a path to Broadway. And I realized when I got there how competitive and challenging it was. And after a lot of conversations and research into the career field and trips to New York to check it out, I realized how very competitive it is and how many amazing actors and actresses are working other jobs to sustain that. And it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I also realized that I had always loved serving and helping people. Like Mike said, I just had a drive for that. That's something that was taught to me. And like the happiest and most fun I often had was when I was on a group of people all on mission together, doing something. So I started exploring with classes a lot of different things. And after graduation, I tried a lot of different jobs. And initially I focused on working with high school students, college students. I did an internship in Ireland because I thought at one point I was going to live overseas, and I still would love that. But, I think when every single job that I've tried, I've learned there's challenging jobs, but there's really no bad job most of the time if you're teachable, because you're always going to learn a skill that's going to take you to the next place. And so for me, where I am right now, I feel like the age group that I wanted to work with has changed and shifted at times. Like it's often been, initially I thought it was high schoolers. Then I realized, no, I really love college students. I love having those conversations when someone's independent and making choices about things for the first time, about where they want to go. I love asking questions. I'm curious. So my age group now is pretty broad. Like I could be talking to anyone in any age group, but a lot of the questions about what motivates us and what drives us, if you stay curious, people are interesting regardless of any age that they're in. Another thing that has transitioned is, I thought it'd be entertaining people, and then it switched to like helping people. And I think the more that I learned as a lifelong learner, like when I learned about what it means to be trauma informed, when I went through different challenges personally after being out in the work field, I was at Virginia Tech when the shootings happened on campus, and that shifted my life dramatically. And it shifted the way that I approached every job ever since. And I'm thankful, as horrible as the situation was, it's shaped everything. And so now I'm excited about learning about things that make life better for others. I'm passionate about how you can give people resources. Fighting for justice is really important to me as well. And I love that in talent acquisition, I get to not just meet people and give them jobs, but I actually am thinking about how can I bring equity? How can I create pipelines or give an invitation to the table to those people who might have been overlooked, or people who maybe just didn't have the same privilege I did yet, but if they were given the opportunity, that could change not just their history, but the story of generations to come. I feel like with great privilege comes great responsibility. And as a recruiter, if you are passionate about justice, you can bring change. And so it might be a very long process, but I get excited when I meet people from different cultural backgrounds, and I can be curious about them and I can help them make connections, again, whether it's here to Access or somewhere else. So I guess like stay learning, stay hungry, stay eager, always be teachable, and you're going to be fine wherever you go. That's kind of my thing.
I think about this question, and it's funny because confession is I'm not a planner. Like I've never been, this is what I want to be in 5 years, or this is what I think my career goal is, or anything like that. I am a person who often follows my gut, or just does stuff till I'm unhappy, or pays attention to opportunity. So I think there's a couple of things. It was really clear to me that doing a year of volunteer work was really important to me. So that is something I knew. And then coming after that and I think the thing I've learned and is important to me is, I remember early on starting as a crisis worker, I never thought I'd be in leadership in a crisis team, but it started meaning more and more to me of what being able to shape the program and how service is delivered in my own community. I still live in Montgomery County. So I've shifted and really started looking at, it's not about titles for me. It's about what roles or positions, what work that gives you the opportunity to be in front of, and really what kind of work do you want to do? What kind of work is your areas of strength that matches that, and what is the need at any given time of that. So I didn't know what my life is going to look like, and I still don't, right? Like I don't know how long I'll do crisis for, but right now I know I'll keep doing it. But I think I've also kept in the back of my head just areas of interest I've noticed. I really enjoy grief work. I really enjoy supporting people after a traumatic event, whether that is a loss or a natural disaster. I also did my graduate internship in a college counseling center, and I really enjoy that age. So I don't know, who knows? I don't plan. So who knows where I'll be in 10 years, 5 years, next year. But really just looking at what is opportunity in the work in front of you, that role gives, that it's really not about titles, for me, at least, that it's really about the work. I think leadership comes, you can lead from any role. It's not about titles. So I had no vision, but here I am.
I think that question for anyone really, but for a college student to ask them, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? I think there's value in thinking about that and maybe having a response to that type of a question. But as Mike referenced earlier, there are jobs that will exist 5 years from now or opportunities that will exist 5 years from now that you can't possibly know anything about. So yeah, staying curious and being open.
Being open.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, I remember when I think about this question, I think about like when the first time, like when you're in middle school and they start asking you about like career path, and you have, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a police officer. And I remember my answer was like, I want to be a helper, like, right, I'm going to be a helper. And I remember being told, that's not a thing. Like, that's not a thing you can be. And I was like, well, ouch, like maybe though, right? Like maybe. So, going through my college experience, I wasn't always the best student. I got excited about the work I was doing, but really, if it wasn't a course in my major, it was like, hey, I'm gonna do what I got to do to get through this. And then I really wasn't sure what the future had in store for me in terms of a leadership role. And I think what I realized quickly after getting into the field was the value of investment. And that was the one thing I had that a lot of really good students might have had a smaller tank of. So whatever I was going to do, I was going to learn as much as I could learn about it. I was going to be as invested as I could in somebody's process. I was going to be as helpful as I could. I was going to care more than the next person. And the value of that investment with my teammates, with the people that I was supporting in the field, with my community partners, that level of investment has paid off for me. And I think something I try to pass on to folks that come our way right out of school that we hire on as facilitators is talking about that value of investment. And if you care enough to find out, you don't have to have all the answers, right? Like you're gonna do whatever it takes to find that thing that somebody needs. And that may just be for you to just be there and sit next to them, but care enough to do it consistently and really be invested in that process. So specifically in my role, I wasn't sure that there was a leadership role for me right out of school. But taking advantage of those opportunities, being invested, and no matter what position you're holding, much like Moira said, whatever position I've held, I wanted to do it at an elite level. So that could be anywhere from entry level to leadership. And then those opportunities will present themselves if you're taking every responsibility as life-changing. So I think that's been the story for me.
Well, thank you again. So this question, I think, is so helpful to students because we're all growing. Time marches on. We make mistakes. Hopefully we learn from them. So can you each share an example of an obstacle, challenge, or failure that you've encountered in your professional life and sort of how you came out on the other end of it? We want to normalize this for students.
I'm thinking, it's such a good question. A challenge I experienced. Okay, I've got it. All right. So I grew up in Western New York, in rural to suburban kind of area, and it wasn't a very multicultural area. And when I went to college, it is the first time when I started traveling and really engaging with others that it's a beautiful thing to engage with people from a different background and perspective than you. But when I worked for the first time where I became the complete minority was probably the best and hardest experience of my life. So for 6 years, I served in historic Black Miami, and I worked as a K-12 program coordinator. And I was going into schools and working with families and staff members and supervising even while being supervised by everyone from a different cultural background than me. So Caribbean American, African American, mixed backgrounds, people of all different identifications. And it was wonderful and extremely challenging because I knew coming in, there's so much I don't know. And there were a lot of assumptions that were made wrongly about me, but I also kind of knew, you know what, there have been a lot of assumptions that have been made wrongly about other people for a very long time historically. And so I decided that the best thing I could do was just keep asking questions and building trust and just stay humble, you know, because I could get offended a lot and get hurt a lot and things were very, very hard. But over the course of 3 years in that position, I earned so much trust, and I still have lifelong friendships that have come out of that job. And it's shifted my understanding of the world dramatically because I feel like I have been sitting at the feet learning from others, regardless of their title, regardless of their age, who are able to teach me about things that I don't yet understand. And so what was incredibly hard at the time took a lot of grit to stick it out. But what was beautiful was that the next job I took for the next 3 years was teaching in a different historic Black community in Miami. And having some of that cultural knowledge and understanding now gave me like a quicker speed of learning to be more useful and able to actually turn on and start educating kids in music, but doing it from a social, emotional learning, trauma-informed perspective that was shaped by the cultural perspective of those I had learned from. And it was like being immersed in multicultural world 24/7 was exhausting, but coming back where I live right now, I currently live in a much less multicultural space and I miss it terribly, but it's shifted my life forever. And I think that the challenges that we face of any type, it shapes your character. It reveals your character. Let me say that. You choose your attitude every day when you go to work. If you have a difficult manager, you choose how you respond. And you can treat yourself with honor and treat others with respect, even if they don't treat you and your coworkers and those you manage and like across the board. So I would just say, yeah, staying humble, having grit has served me well. And I hope that I'm a better person to work with in any setting after having been through the difficult ones.
So many. You want me to just pick like one? There's so many. I think going off of what Terri said and something I can, identify with about knowing that you don't always know what you're doing and it's okay you're going to screw up. Like you are going to screw up. You're going to drop a ball. You're going to mess up, and to be able to ask for help or not. I think very early on, I'd really struggle with feedback and not taking, like being able to take the feedback, but then really internalizing it and personalizing it and taking it to this place of, then I'm not a good fit. I should look for somewhere out. I think I figured out through work, I'm not type A, but I have some perfectionist tendencies that I was not aware of. And so I think being able to be willing to be uncomfortable, right? Like I say, I learned more about working on a team when I lived with a bunch of volunteers than I ever did in school. I learned more about myself and how to work on a team. So there, I think learning to be uncomfortable can be very, very hard, but it's also when you grow. Right now, Terri and Mike both have supported me in the past year. I was actually in the past couple of months, I stepped down from being the director. I've been the director for several years, but I realized I had overextended myself and I couldn't fulfill that. And so to keep trying, right? Because I signed up for this, I'm going to show up. And sometimes it's okay that you need to pause and look at, I'm trying all these things, right? It's that problem solving. It's that being curious to say, these are all the different pieces I'm working on, but what is in my control? What's not in my control? And for me to be able to say, actually, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to move into an associate director role because it's going to put me in front of the work I'm really passionate about. And it's going to help me learn to create balance and not overextend myself. And that doesn't mean that I don't contribute. So I think being able to be curious and pausing at times, I think so much we can learn to you just keep showing up. It's what you do. Or, some people are runners, right? It can feel easier to roll out and find a new job somewhere. But to really be able to pause and make decisions about your career with clarity. I'm also going to say my job is the thing that has sadly motivated me more than enough times to work on my own stuff outside of work because I want to show up and do well. The several times I've been like, I should probably go see my own therapist for a little bit has been because I've seen my stuff that I needed to work on impacting work because I just care about my job so much. So I think knowing all of those things as a young professional is being able to learn. And I think too of that working with different people, I think one of the biggest things is communication, learning somebody, having trust in relationships, taking things personally or making assumptions as you learn to communicate and learn other people. And it's these different work relationships, they're not friendships. And how do you navigate all that? And I would say really just taking time to build relationship with people. And if you notice somebody rubs you the wrong way or you're reacting to something, to take that time to get to know them and react and notice about that and have a conversation instead and say, hey, I noticed this, like, what was that about? I can't tell you. There's been more than one times I'm like, I get an email and then I'm like, wait, they're just doing their job and I don't know them. And it came across in an email and I actually I like this person most times. What's that about? So I would say just pausing a lot more and reminding myself to do that is a lesson I keep learning over and over would be my advice.
Yeah, I when you first said an obstacle and then about overcoming, I'm like, all right, well, I don't know if I've overcome a couple. Like I had a couple ideas and then I'm like, wait, am I still overcoming them? Like maybe I can't share how I've overcome them at this point. No, I think, and this is probably a collective shared obstacle, has been the pandemic and providing support to a community in a time of extremely stressful just connection and trying to support a team and a community of people with varying levels of concerns and varying levels of risk. So in doing that, recognizing very early on that we tried to gather as much information as we could, kind of got the scope of how the team felt about delivering service as quickly face-to-face as we could, recognizing the need for face-to-face connection with a lot of our people who were voicing extreme isolation, leveraging telehealth as much as we could, and just being creative in a lot of different spaces. And I think it's still something that if you have to say, how did you overcome that? I think we're still overcoming it. I think we've just, even though it's been a couple of years, have still kind of gotten through. It's taken about 2.5 years to get through the shock to the system of what's happened. And now we have a lot of people in recovery from some of the damage that's been caused by the past couple of years. So that's kind of a half answer of how we've overcome it, but also still creatively overcoming it. And I think the only way that we've really been able to do that as a team, and I really can't even take the credit for it. I'm a part of a really elite team of individuals that I have working for me who have fought through tremendous adversity to deliver the highest level of support to the people that we serve in the community. And really it's taking the feedback from them, because they have fantastic ideas on how to do that, and taking feedback from the youth that we support on ways to best serve them and be creative in that service delivery. So that's one of the biggest and probably a shared obstacle that we could all discuss, but something that has caused us to kind of really pause and plan intentionally about, and then creatively deliver support in a way that makes the most sense.
Thank you. So we have time for one last question. So if you can, in a succinct sort of response, provide a piece of advice, a pearl of wisdom for our current students who would be interested to work at Access Services or an organization like Access after graduation, what should they know?
I think that for me, the piece of advice is know how you learn best and keep learning, because you will be, I love the word Mike chose, like Mike, you identify yourself as elite, right? And you want a team of people around you that are elite. So when you interview people, you're going to look for the absolute best. I think that, I don't know, the older I get, I'm just so thankful when I realized that learning didn't end in college, and that the ability to come into a group of people at a conference or in a meeting or on the phone, like strangers and professionals from any industry, specifically with Access, like for me, talent acquisition is new to me, but I have been a learner for a very long time since college about a lot of different things. So I read, I interview people when I meet them who know things I don't know. I'm curious and I ask questions and I listen. I'm really interested in gaining a multicultural perspective because I've learned there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And if I just stay with people and hang with people and watch stuff and read stuff and listen to podcasts of people that think the same way as me, I'm never going to grow. And so I've realized I got to be exposed to people different than me. And that's why travel changes us. That's why college changes us. So conferences, podcasts, right now for me at Access, like I would say, if you're interested in a career in behavioral health or in working with children and family or service providing in any of the different areas, like what do you know right now about mental health? What are you listening to and learning to? What are you reading outside of social media? Like where are you diving into things so that when you come into those conversations as a professional, you have something of credibility to share? That's not just based off of an opinion from a friend, but it's something that you learned, that you studied, that you researched, that you interviewed. I just think it's so incredibly valuable, and it's so life-giving to me to be able to talk with people about things. And the breadth of my knowledge in what I do now, how I recruit and how I help people make connections, it's primarily based off of what I've learned by asking questions or reading or interviewing from others. It's not because I'm that great of a amazing person with my bag of tricks. Like I just remember and learn and then try to incorporate that new knowledge into this conversation with this person today so that I can be most helpful to them. So that's my advice. Keep learning, figure out the way you learn best. It doesn't have to be like me, but whatever that is, pursue it and be sure that you're rubbing shoulders and listening to people that think differently than you do.
I think if you want to, think about what you want from a workplace, right? Like the thing, what matters to you. Some people, it's really different things. Sometimes for people, it's what they need for stability. They're looking for something that's a 9 to 5 and right. They need to keep the lights on. I recognize what's most important to me is I'll make the money work, but I need to work somewhere that is in alignment with my values. Like think about what your life needs and what's important to you. I would say first and foremost, when you are looking about where do you even want to work within a field? What is that organization about? And I think that's why for me that those things were in alignment with Access. Not that it's perfect, but right, it makes it when it's hard or we're working together towards something. I know there's a commitment to work through stuff. I know that I am always impressed by individuals who ask me questions in an interview, that they want to know what am I about as a leader running this program? How am I going to support them? What is my vision for the program? And I always say I love new hires because really it makes us look at, we have to teach what we're doing and why we do it. And so it's either a, hey, yeah, you have a new idea. There's a better way to do this. Everyone is an expert in something. You're already coming in, you have experience. I might need to teach you crisis work, but you know how to sit with somebody, or maybe you're really good at looking at systems and flow and information management, and you can help us improve that a process in the program. So we have an interview process that has a second interview because we want people to come for a half a day. I would say, know what you want from a workplace, interview them to make sure it's a good fit for you, just as much as you are trying to impress them so you get an offer. I would say seeing that mutual interest or passion in what you care about a workplace. I love being challenged in an interview, asking me, why do I stay here? What is the hardest thing about my job? What do I love about my job? I always am impressed and enjoy those questions. And I think that takes the time, right, to learn yourself, know how you learn, and do your best to have clarity. And maybe you are like me and you're somebody who often knows this is what I don't want, and then see what's left about what you would want in a workplace. That would be my advice.
That's great. It's hard to follow both of those. There's not going to be a lot that I don't repeat. And I think what Terri and Moira just said is really valuable in terms of finding, and it's what means a lot to me is being on a call with folks like Terri and Moira, because you're a part of an agency and a group of people who, I know I use the term a bunch of times, but just have this investment, have an authentic investment in what you do. I think it's important to come in knowing what you're good at and accepting what you need to learn and owning that. You don't need to know everything. You need to have investment, which will give you enough to want to learn what you need to know to be really effective. So I know what we look for in people coming to our program to work for us is people who are invested in the community and invested in causes. And we provide the opportunity for you to make money to do the thing that you're passionate about. And I think that's the most important thing. When I look back at the last 20 years of work I've done, not a lot of it has felt like work. It's felt like I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this thing. So my advice would be to find out what drives you and find out what you're good at and find a way to get paid for that thing that you're good at. Learn what you don't know. Surround yourself with good people, creative people. Keep an open mind, be willing to learn, and give yourself more credit. Give yourself more credit to grow, and you're going to be the next leader of a program, right? And don't rush that process. Enjoy the process. Do every job that you take along the way to your leadership role like it is the last job you're going to have, because it involves, all of our programs involves people's lives. We're directly impacting another person's life every day. And we run teams that directly impact people's lives. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And for people that have that same passion, our programs find ways to help them meet that and build a community of people that have a resilient workforce here, because we have each other's back, and we have I think it's when you run through mission and value, you can never go wrong. So I feel like we have a strong force of that here at Access Services, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Such great advice. And I hope for students, there's like the theme that I'm hearing is almost like there's a sense of relief that's involved or can be involved for someone who's just starting out, and that, hey, my learning doesn't have to stop here. It doesn't stop with my major. It doesn't stop with my degree or the end of the semester or what have you. There's a whole community of people I can learn from. Like, my learning doesn't have to end. and I can make mistakes and I can try out new things and I can get to know myself, and that's a process and it's okay. So I just have found this conversation to be so delightful. Thank you so much for your time. Again, students, please feel free to connect with CSPD if you'd like to get in touch with any of these folks here today who are on our panel. Thank you, Access Services, for your time. This was great.